Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. Today I'm joined by my friend, endurance rider, and overall amazing horsewoman, and human in general, Lancette Koerner. Lancette and I met in 2016. She is not a professional horse trainer, but it is safe to say she is a professional horse collector. I've had the pleasure of knowing several of her horses over the years. Lancette is most definitely a student of the horse with a passion for endurance riding. In addition to participating in endurance rides all over the Southwest, she also is a ride manager for the Tonto Twist and the White Mountain Tango rides in Arizona, and is a very active part of the endurance community. In 2024, Lancette completed the Tevis Cup ride on her 19-year-old mare, Freda Baskin, aka Jantar. For those that aren't familiar, this ride is 100 challenging miles to complete in 24 hours or less. Lancette was one of just 54 horse and rider pairs to complete the ride out of the 139 that started. Typically, this ride has a completion rate of 50 to 54%, but in 2024, only 39% finished the ride. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Lancette is a gem. There's a lot to love about her, whether you're interested in endurance or not. So I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome, Lancette. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's my pleasure. Now, I am excited for you to tell us more about endurance riding and the Tevis Cup ride for sure. But first, can you tell us about your background getting into horses and getting into endurance riding?
Sure. So I think I was born loving horses. Always wanted a horse. But unfortunately, I was not able to actually own my own horse until I was about 26. And my first horse was an adopted wild Mustang. He was 9 months old, and that was an adventure. I had no clue what I was doing, so I learned a lot along the way. And how I got into endurance riding was the couple that came over to help trim the wild Mustang's hooves actually was Callie Thornburg, and she had done Tevis as a little girl. And she told me all about it. And I knew right then that that was what I wanted to do. So that was in about 1990. And I didn't do my first ride until 1996. So it was definitely a process.
And was that first ride with that Mustang?
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so now I have to know, your first horse is a baby Mustang, so surely you had to have done some riding before that, a little? What kind of experience did you have getting into it?
Yes. Okay. So my experience prior to that was as a little girl, riding my bicycle. I was probably 10 years old, riding to the nearest rent-a-horse farm, where you could pay $1.25 an hour to ride. And that's what I did for a few years. And beyond that, I really did not have any experience at all. So very limited. I just jumped into let's go get a wild Mustang.
And then 6 years later, I think you said you did your first endurance ride on it. That right there is impressive.
Yes. Well, I actually got him in 1988, and he was then 9 months old. And so it took a couple years before I met Callie, and then from there, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the first ride was actually the Man Against Horse ride in Prescott, which is horses and runners on the same course at the same time. So it was a wild ride.
Yeah, I bet that that is probably quite a sight for horses that are not used to that.
Yes, for some it certainly can be.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about mobs of people running along with them, but it all worked out. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. And so tell us where you went with that horse and where you went next.
So That horse was fantastic. He taught me a lot. He was very smart and put me in my place a time or two. We had a great time though, but it became very clear after a few years that 25-mile rides he loved, but anything longer than that, and he didn't think that was so much fun. So I ended up buying an Arabian. Arabians dominate the sport of endurance. They're just kind of meant for it. And so I've owned Arabians ever since.
So tell us about your first Arabian.
Oh, goodness. Let's see. My first Arabian was Khan.
Hopefully all fond memories, right?
Yes. No, he's lovely. He was a wonderful, fantastic first Arabian to have. Very forgiving, very easy. I still have him. He's 27 and he is still loving life, but we don't ride him much anymore.
So did you do bigger rides, longer rides with him when he was younger? I gather you were able to step up from that 25-mile comfort zone of the Mustang and do some longer, bigger races?
Yes, actually we did. I believe Khan's endurance career ended after about 700 miles, give or take, total. He was so much fun. He was just a gem. He loved being out there, but unfortunately, turns out, hindsight's always 2020. Well, actually, I guess I really didn't know this when I purchased him, but he had a severe knee injury, and it turns out that caused a lot of issues for him continuing in the sport. So he is retired, but he taught all my grandkids to ride. He was the perfect guest horse, and we just had a lot of fun.
Okay, and now I know the horse that you rode in the Tevis Cup was Jantar, and I love Jantar, know her well. Is there any notable horses between Khan and Jantar you want to mention, or do you want to tell us your story with her?
Each horse that I've had, I've learned a lot from, of course. Cirrus was probably the number one horse that taught me the most. And Jantar, of course, I'm still learning from her. She's something else. But she is my heart horse. She can be very challenging, as you know, but she is tough as nails and loves the sport as much as I do, best I can tell.
And how long have you had her?
Let's see. She just turned 20 on April 1st, and I got her as a 7-year-old.
Long time.
13 years, yeah.
Yes, that's a long relationship. And so a 7-year-old, was she I know that she had a racing career, if I remember correctly, Arabian racing, right?
Well, she actually never raced, but she was trained for the track. And I am guessing that is why, to this day, she does not want any other horses in front of her. And she expresses that very dramatically.
Yes, okay. And so you got her as a 7-year-old. She had already done some endurance at that point, or did you start her in endurance?
Actually, mostly what she had done was trail riding with a friend of mine, and he taught her, how to cross bridges and creeks, and he did all kinds of really good ground initial training, trail training. And then his daughter did one limited distance ride on her, which she did not finish that first ride. So no, she really didn't have any endurance.
Okay. And did you, I'm assuming, bought her for the intention of doing endurance with her?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how that went. How did that journey go? And when did you start doing a ride? And how did you make your way to Tevis?
So the journey with Jantar, let's see. Most of my first years with her were spent trying to slow her down. She just wanted to go as fast as she could through every course. But, that doesn't always work out well for the horse. So I was trying to be the brains of the partnership there and slow her down and get through the rides. It was really challenging. We always had a lot of fun, but she just was so fast and just wanted to go. So it wasn't until, I don't know, several years in when things really started to click with us. And I always loved her, of course, but she was just very headstrong and just wanted to go. So I had to work on that. But I think we've got it dialed in. And now we're a true partnership, and I just know what she needs, and I can feel it, as we're traveling down the trail, and it's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Now, let's see. So would you say when you say like she's just too fast, she just wants to go, is that is true even in a training ride, you could call it, or a casual ride, or is that more of like during the heat of the race when there's other horses are there, or is it just like when she's got the road in front of her, she's going?
It really depends on the situation. If it's just she and I out on the trail, no, she's not like that. But if there's competition around, and again, it depends who it is. But generally speaking, she makes it clear she wants to be in front and wants to be first. So that race training, I believe, just really was impacted her, I guess I should say.
It's where she finds her comfort zone.
I guess so.
Yeah. And with the things that I already know about her, she's got a personal bubble, and she takes it very seriously. And it's something I would say you can see not just when she's moving with other horses, if you look at it that way. You know what I mean?
100%. She definitely has a very large bubble. Yes, she is not a cuddly horse. She is a red, fiery mare through and through.
Now, before we get too far into endurance land here with Jantar, let's back up for just a second, because you mentioned Cirrus and how he probably taught you, maybe you said the most, he taught you a lot.
Yes.
That I know. So tell us a little bit about Cirrus, and would you say that there were lessons that you learned from him that really helped you with Jantar, or your other horses for that matter?
I think that the lessons I learned from Cirrus will benefit every horse that I ever own from here on out. What I came to realize was his level of sensitivity was sky high, and he was extremely smart, and extremely athletic, and the most comfortable horse I have ever ridden. I still miss him and I love him, but in the end, as much as I tried to get him to a point where the stress, I guess, or the stimulation, really is how I would word it. The stimulation of the sport of endurance, as much as I tried to get him over that, it really just didn't ever really happen to the level it needed to be where I could say he was really enjoying his job. And so I retired him from endurance and found him a very low-key home where he could just hang out and be pampered. And I still get text messages about him and pictures, and he's doing great.
He was a special dude. I learned a lot from that guy too. Very interesting fellow.
Yes.
Very interesting fellow.
He really was.
Yeah. And so the level of sensitivity when you're in it is very frustrating. I think it's easy when you look back sometimes with horses like that to be like, oh man, it's they just come out and teach you the thing that all these other horses were kind of saying, just they weren't so dramatic about it. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about horses like that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes, most definitely. And I will never forget the lessons that he taught me.
Yeah. And before we move on, we must also mention Sweet Mesa. And so when I think of Mesa, I've known you and that horse for a little while now. And I know there were times that you didn't know what you were going to be doing together. And I know there's times that you have had the most happy rides and done endurance rides, and you've had your friends do endurance rides on her. So tell us a little bit about her. I know she's got a special place.
Yes, she definitely does. She was one of those horses that I just saw her, fell in love. She was not broke. She was 7 years old. She didn't know anything. So, well, why not buy her and bring her home and call Tamara and say, will you help me with this horse?
Why not?
Yeah, right. But she was so sweet and just such a beautiful girl. So I brought her home with the hopes of doing endurance on her. But yeah, there was times I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. We are now, I can't even believe it, but 7 years in. You know, I've had her since 2018. So it took a long time with everything going on in my life to get her where we are now. But we are to a point now where I've had guests ride her. My granddaughter rides her. I ride her, and she is a powerhouse. And the ground that she can cover is amazing. And she seems plenty happy doing it. Although, if she had her druthers, she'd probably just really like to just be hanging out in the house with me, watching TV, or, you know, she's just kind of that kind of horse, you know. But everybody loves Mesa. You got it right. She is very, very sweet.
Yes, and you know when I think of your horses and I think of her and just all the different things you've been through with them, it's very evident how no matter what your level of personal like training or where you were at with what you were working on, you were always trying to make sure you got it right for the horse. Like if they weren't happy doing this, you weren't going to push it, you know, beyond. And I've always admired that about you, Lance.
Oh,
it's very lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
well, if it's not fun for the horse, it's not fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So let's jump back to endurance and Tevis. Tell us, for someone who doesn't know anything about endurance, just kind of give us that overview of how the sport works, and then we'll get into the specific challenges of Tevis itself.
Okay. So endurance riding is long distance riding. The motto of endurance is to finish is to win, but saying that, it is a timed event. So it is a race. A lot of people refer to it as a ride. And there's several different distances. We have intro rides, which are usually 10 to 12 miles. We have limited distance rides, which are generally 25-mile rides. And then there's 50-mile rides, which is the endurance division, and 75-mile rides and 100-mile rides. For the 25-mile ride, you have 6 hours to complete the ride. And that includes your stops along the way, your vet hold. And in the 50, you have 12 hours to complete, including your hold times. Same with the other distances as well. So hold times are included in your total time.
And so hold time is when, are there holds that are not vet checks?
No. Well,
okay. So a hold is a vet check and a rest, basically?
So here's how it typically goes. So for a 25-mile ride, somewhere usually about halfway through the ride, you will stop for, say, 30 minutes. And your hold time does not start for the horse until the horse has come down to pulse criteria, which in most cases in our region, it is 60 beats per minute. So that's the very first thing that everybody wants to do is come in, get your horse's heart rate down to at least pulse criteria, and then the rest time starts. So after the typical hold time of, say, 30 minutes for a 25-mile ride, then the riders can go back out on the trail after their horse has passed the vet check. And there is a vet card used to record the horse's parameters, which includes the pulse rate, capillary refill, skin tint. They are measuring levels of hydration and, that kind of thing. And also they do a trot out to make sure the horse is sound.
Okay. At the vet check, they do that as well before they
vet check. And actually, I think oh yeah. So this is one of the kinds of vet cards that we use. So
yes, plenty of things to fill out there.
Yes, there is. Yep.
Yeah.
Listen to gut sounds, skin tinting, jugular refill, anal tone, muscle tone. They check for back and withers, any wounds, impulsion and attitude, and basically an overall impression. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things that the horses are checked, and they are checked before, during, and after the ride.
Okay, and so is that like a cleared to go or not cleared to go, and that's it? Or is it a percentage score or something like that? Or how does that go?
So it's basically cleared to go or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do they have, like, before the race starts, is there a vet check and a trot then as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Every horse is, there's a pre-ride vet check, and every horse goes through the pre-ride vet check. And sometimes things happen and they don't pass, sometimes things happen on the trailer and, they get out lame and, bonked themselves or whatever. But yeah, they're all checked before, during, and after.
And at the end. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it is timed. So there is placings, I guess, as far as first, second, third, that kind of thing?
Yes. So riders in the same distance are competing against each other for placings. And there's first through the top 10. And then we also have best condition, which is the most coveted award, I would say. And that's judged on, it's 3 different scoring sections. One is the horse's scores on the vet card. Then it's also based on the weight of the rider and the time that they were out on course. And then within the ride, we also have weight divisions. So there's actually 5 divisions. There's young rider, featherweight, lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. And so everybody competes within their division as well.
Now those weights, are those the human or the horse?
Okay, so the weight is based on the weight of the rider and all their tack. So
Okay.
when a rider comes in off the trail, the top 10 finishers have the opportunity to stand for best condition. And to do that, then you will take all your tack, your saddle, your pad, and everything your horse carried that day, and you stand on a scale and they note your weight. And so that is one of the factors that they use to calculate the best condition. So if you're a featherweight rider, it is more difficult to win best condition over a heavyweight. So if a heavyweight finishes before you or even close to your time, all of the things considered rather equal, then they're going to win because obviously their horse carried more weight.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
So other than that portion of it, the rider doesn't have to meet any benchmarks like at the vet checks or anything like that?
As long as they come in and they meet pulse criteria and they have their horses passed the vet check and they've made any cutoff times that there may be. Sometimes there's cutoff times, but most rides don't have them. But as long as they've met those, no, they would be cleared to go on.
And then, so it sounds then like there's no amateur and professional division. There's no men's, women's, other than juniors and adults. There's no division aside from the weight of the rider in the tack. I have that right?
Yes, it's actually we have a junior division. We have a young rider division. Junior rider is up to age 16. Once they turn 16, they move on to the young rider division.
Yes, here is one more question for you. So,
okay.
Other than passing the vet check, there is not any other prerequisites to do the ride. Is that true?
Other than the horse has to be 4 years old to compete in a limited distance. It has to be 5 years old to compete in a 50-mile ride, and it has to be 6 years old to compete in a 100-mile ride. Some special rides do have requirements, of you have to have ridden 300 miles, let's say, but that is a rare occasion, like the national championship, Tevis Cup. A few rides do have requirements.
Yeah. Okay. And then during the ride, if you go off course, let's say you get a little lost or something, is that being judged? Obviously your time and things is going to be affected, but is that being judged or going to disqualify you or anything?
So we aren't like some of the other long distance sports where you're actually judged along the way. But if you do go off course, you need to go back to where you got off course and continue from that spot. And if you do that, it's fine. But if you don't, then you will be disqualified. And that does happen.
And if I've been in some types of sports where, like, if you touch the ground, I forget what the rule was. It was like if your elbow touches the ground, you are now disqualified or something like that. Is there anything about coming off and getting back on or anything like that?
No, it's as long as it's one horse, one rider, and you make it to the start and to the finish and you pass all the requirements, the vet checks and the checkpoints, if there's checkpoints along the way, and any other rules that ride management may have at that particular ride. Like sometimes you have to go out to a specific checkpoint and there may not be a person there to check you off, so you have to sign a clipboard, things like that. As long as you manage all those things, you could even walk or run the ride with your horse. You technically don't have to be riding the whole time. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people
Okay.
don't. A lot of people will get off, and especially a heavyweight rider, they'll get off and walk or run up the hills, and, to give their horse a break.
Cool. Now tell us about Tevis. I already mentioned that it's 100 miles, 24 hours, and it's a challenging ride. It is known to be very challenging. Tell us about that. What are some of the challenges that people talk about, and what did you experience?
So Tevis is extremely challenging. One of the big challenges is the number of people, that you're out on the course with. The first year that I attempted Tevis, there was 198 riders. The second time I attempted Tevis was a lot less. It was 100 and I believe 139 riders.
Mm-hmm.
That made a huge difference to me. And then, of course, one of the other difficulties of Tevis is there are a lot of cutoff times that you have to meet, and they have them for good reason, but it's not always easy to make the cutoff times for various reasons. If let's just say if somebody in front of you is struggling and you can't get around them, or if there's a conga line of people and you can't get around, then that could really mess up your time. And that actually is one of the things that happened to me in 2015 on my first attempt. So, and I guess the biggest two issues I think that make Tevis so difficult are the elevation. I mean, it's about almost 15,000 feet of elevation gain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you lose about, I think I wrote that down. Let me see. Yeah. Almost 21,000
Wow.
elevation loss. So it's a lot of up and down, and the heat can be really, really difficult for a lot of horses and riders.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we may not have all the elevation in Arizona, but you've got plenty of opportunities to practice the heat, huh?
And actually, so last year, that was one of my strategies. I did not go up north and get out of the horrendous heat. I stayed in the valley leading up to Tevis, and we trained here in the valley. And I think it really made a huge difference. What felt hot to a lot of those other competitors was not hot to Jantar and I. So, yeah, it made a big difference.
I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also, just to clarify, you mentioned the conga line thing. I assume you're saying here you're in the type of trail that's single track. There's no room to pass, and there you are. So you can only go as fast as however many are in front of you. So if someone's having a hard time, I gather you all just have to wait it out and get to the other side of it then?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so you said the heat is a common challenge. The cutoff times. Now I only know like this much because I did follow you last year when you did it. I followed your little tracker.
Oh,
So there
did
are
you?
certain spots. Yeah, I sure did. I remember going to bed and thinking, oh, Lancette's out there, and woke up and was like, dang, Lancette just finished. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So,
It was a long night. But the crazy thing is, one of the things I was really worried about was getting so tired, and I was worried I would fall asleep or, oh no, not at all. So much adrenaline all night long. I did not have a issue with that whatsoever. So I was grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So people have issues with the heat and the up and down and then the cutoff times. So in this race, and you're saying not so commonly in others, you have to get to a certain spot by a certain time for that vet check. Otherwise, they're not going to let you keep continuing, basically.
That is correct. There's a lot of cutoff times in Tevis, and if you don't make the cutoff times, you're disqualified. And that is what happened to me during my attempt in 2015. Just didn't make it to, I think I went 57 miles, but I was late making it to the cutoff. So that was the end of my day.
Mm-hmm. And on that one, how did you feel? Like if you hadn't had a cutoff time, did you feel like you could keep going?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Jantar, she ate for, I don't know, the whole time we were waiting for a trailer ride back to base camp, and she ultimately was fine. So yeah, I felt fantastic. I felt like we could have gone on, but everybody knows when you go into Tevis, that's just the way it is. They're pretty strict about the cutoffs, and that's what happened.
Yeah. And so how much did you have to keep track, or how much did you have to push yourself to make the cutoffs in 2024?
So because of my experience in 2015, it's hard to believe it took me that long to get back, but it really did. I was much more determined and focused, and just really tried to not stay at any of the stops along the way for too long. It's easy to do. Time goes by so quick. It's incredible. But so I was just a lot more focused, I think, and determined to get through and not miss any cutoff times.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing to think, like you said, it took you that long to get back, and you were with the same horse. I think that's so cool.
Yes.
That's so cool. Now, to me, a 19-year-old horse doing that sounds like, wow, that's impressive. Is that considered an older horse in endurance, or not really? I know the Arabians live forever.
Yeah, she is considered an older horse, but more and more we're seeing older horses out there. And one thing wonderful about endurance is we have several awards for longevity. Well, we have a longevity pin. Actually, I have one of those. Show you. And that is given to a horse that has been in competing at least 150-mile ride for 10 years. It does not have to be consecutive. And Jantar received that one. So,
Wow.
And then there's also another award it's called the Decade Team Award, which that's given to the horse and rider combination who have competed together for at least 10 years of 50 miles, at least one 50-mile ride a year. And so we had a couple of years where Haley was riding Jantar. So I just now this last year qualified for our decade team. So we will be getting that pin here I guess by the end of the year, we'll get that. So I'm very proud of that. She's still going strong at 20 years old now. And you do see more and more of that.
You had mentioned how Arabians are dominant in the sport. I know there is a Mustang contingent. Tell us about that. And it's like, are thoroughbreds very common, or are there any other breeds you might see besides Arabs, or is that really what you're going to see the most of?
So yes, you will. That's the breed you will see the most of, but it's open to any breed. And, you see gaited horses, quarter horses, thoroughbreds. There are many other breeds that are represented in endurance, but it's just that the Arabians are, typically the lighter body, I should say, and just very well suited to the sport.
Okay. Make it a little easier, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does your training routine look like? Let's say for a horse like Jantar, as you were getting ready for Tevis, versus a horse like Mesa, who's competing but hasn't done something like Tevis. What does it look like for your different horses?
That's a good question. So with Jantar, we're currently basically just keeping active in participating and competing in rides. And we had a 50-mile ride 2 weeks ago, and we have another one this weekend. And we're very fortunate to have mini endurance rides fairly close. And so for her, leading up to Tevis, the first time as well as the second time, I concentrated on participating in multi-day rides, which is 50 mile after 50 mile after 50 mile. And that is a really good test of their ability, in my mind, to go and compete at Tevis.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, of doing 50 and then the next day doing a 50 and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. The first year I did Tevis on Jantar in 20, well, that was 2015. But in 2014, I had competed on her 5 days of 50 miles a ride, 50 miles each day for 5 days. And she just was incredibly strong, and everybody had told me, oh, your horse just gets stronger day after day. And that truly is what happened. So currently with Mesa, I am actually working towards being able to do the multi-days to see how she does.
And Mesa she's done 50s. She just hasn't tried it in consecutive days yet.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And with Jantar, you are still doing 50s. Are you trying Tevis again? With Jantar or anyone else? Is it on the list?
Well, let's just say it isn't off the list.
Okay, I like that answer.
Yeah.
I like that answer. And would you say it isn't off the list for Jantar or to be determined?
So Haley really wants to do Tevis, and it would be very fun and very memorable to be able to participate in that ride with my granddaughter. So, but it has to be right for the horses. So we'll see. To be determined.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, as riders, we have to interpret how our horses feel, both mentally and physically. And we've talked a little bit about that, and I've mentioned how you've always been so in tune and concerned with making sure the horses feel good mentally and physically. What are some ways that you know what your horses need?
I would say when we're riding, I can feel that I've spent so much time riding her, and we're just connected. If I ask her to go forward, like just a gentle nudge, and she says, nah, not ready. I'm like, okay, you're not ready. And we'll go at whatever pace she is ready for at that time. And when she's ready, she picks it up and we move along. The other thing that I look at is I carry carrots. And if she doesn't want to eat a carrot, I'm like, we may need to take a break and just hop off, check her, make sure she's okay, look at her eye, how does she look? And really, I can tell a lot by just looking at her.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that they're all individuals? Surely
Yes.
They have different things that they show you and tell you. Who has Jantar taught you, with all this time you've had together and all these miles, has she taught you things to look for in other horses? Or are they really just totally different?
They really are all individuals, but I always carry carrots, whether I'm riding Jantar or Mesa, and try that same thing. But some horses aren't as fond of carrots as she is, so
right.
yeah, definitely can apply to other horses, but they are all individuals and they all have their different needs for sure.
What would you say is you and your horse's best skill, and what do you need to work on? And maybe that's a separate answer for different horses, or maybe there's an overarching theme.
So with Jantar, our best skill is tough technical trails. She excels at that. And I trust her on the narrowest of trails, and that's just her thing. She's really good at it. What she's not so good at is playing nice with others.
Personal bubble.
She's mostly she just wants to win and wants to be in front, and she's very expressive about her desires. So, we could do better at not being quite so expressive.
I don't know. Can we be too expressive?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I've had her long enough. I've just kind of come to accept who she is. And I just roll with it. But an outsider looking in may not quite understand it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I can say the same thing about my Dolly mare here. So
really?
She's not anywhere near the mare that Jantar is about space, but she definitely has a bubble, and she definitely is not afraid to make some faces and do some things to try to preserve it. So
yes.
Nothing wrong with that as long as we keep to our bubble. We don't go jumping out of the bubble or anything.
Right. Right.
Okay. So I think we've covered pretty much what your current goals are. Are there any long-term goals? Are there some 5-year goals or longer goals that you're looking at, or not right now?
Actually, what I would like to do is go do some endurance rides in other states that I've never done a ride in. There's no better way in my mind to see the state or to see the country really than on the back of a horse and endurance ride. So one of those rides on my list is Fort Meade in South Dakota. So that's kind of what I see in my next 5 years, is just enjoying the trail with my husband, with Haley, with my friend, and my horses, and seeing the country. So I would say that's my goal.
All right. As far as the industry or the sport, where do you see that evolving? Do you see it evolving? Do you see what kind of changes do you think need to happen, or is it just about letting horses get better and better? Like you said, they're lasting longer. What kind of things do you think would help? And if you were put in charge, what would be the first thing you'd change?
Oh boy, that was a tough question. So, I think so. In 2018, when I started the Tonto Twist rides, one of the things that I had always dreamed about prior to that putting on that ride was, wouldn't it be so great if we had navigation on our endurance rides like you do in your car, right? Voice navigation, telling you where to turn and whatnot, because one of the most challenging things for me at endurance rides was the fear of getting lost. That was very real, and it does and has happened to folks. And some of the rides are remote. So it just so happened I stumbled upon a program in 2018 that actually did just that. It provided navigation and voice cues. So I worked hard to learn that program and to make that available for our ride, partially because I needed a map for my riders. So that program happened to be a fantastic option for a map. And so we have been using that ever since 2018, and it is amazing. It makes all the difference in the world. And so what I would like to see is continued improvement in that direction to make it so that riders had that technology and it was easier and better for our riders. In addition to that, I would like to see the timing become digitized instead of all manual, and some rides, I believe in Australia, they do that, as well as tracking all the riders. Like at Tevis, you were able to see me on the field with the tracker, but most rides don't have that availability. I think that would be really great if every ride and rider could be tracked throughout every ride. So I think that is kind of what I'd love to see happen. As I was saying, with the, getting lost and having the ride, it's called Ride with GPS, that we use to follow the course on our rides. But we also use these clothespins, which are ribbons that we put on trees or whatever for the riders to follow along. But these disappear. Cows eat them, the wind blows, people take them down, and they're just not reliable. And one of a ride manager's greatest nightmares is a lost rider. So being able to utilize that technology and continue with that is what I would really like to see happen.
Now you are also ride manager for another ride. So you have 2 rides here in Arizona that you do every year?
Yes. We do the Tonto Twist in Apache Junction, and we do the White Mountain Tango up in Vernon.
How do you like managing shows? Is that a something you enjoy?
I actually really do enjoy it. It's a fun challenge. I do enjoy it. It gives me a good reason to go out and explore all kinds of trails, so I can come up with an endurance ride and put it all together, and then have all my friends and whatnot come in and enjoy the trail. So when I first discovered the area up there in the White Mountains, I had no idea. I'd never ridden up there, and I've lived in Phoenix area or Mesa since 1995. And it wasn't until, I don't know, like 7 years ago that I first went up there and started riding. And the minute that I hit those trails, I was, oh my gosh, we have to have an endurance ride here. It was so beautiful. I wanted to share it with everybody, and so that's the fun of it, is sharing it with others who enjoy it as much as I do.
Cool. Now we'll turn another direction. Horsemanship and personal development. I feel like these go hand in hand. Can you tell us about some lessons that horses have taught you out of the saddle?
Oh, goodness. What comes right to my mind when I thought about that question was when you first came out to help me with Cirrus. And, as I mentioned before, he was so sensitive. And I think one of the best lessons that I had learned was the importance of communicating quietly, with your body language, with just in every aspect. That was a real takeaway for me, among many others. I mean, there's just so many lessons that horses teach you as you go along: patience, empathy. There's a lot.
Yes, definitely a lot. And I like that answer on the quiet communication. I know for myself, and I feel pretty confident that I could say this about you too. Before you start to intentionally learn some of that stuff, you would probably never say that you were loud or big or aggressive or whatever you want to call it. I know I I mean, I would have been described in my past life as being a quiet rider. And I like look at it now and I'm like, oh my God, it's not a quiet rider. There's a lot going on there, you know? So I think that's really interesting. How horses can teach us what quiet is and what intention is and how powerful it is. And I think that, you know, Cirrus and that first time I came to help you was about trailer loading. Some people's biggest nemesis, trailer loading. It's one of those examples of how horses will not tolerate something that other horses have. And then you're like, oh, I really have been, I've been kind of shouting at all these horses, or I've been pushing and pulling way more than I really realized. It just seems normal when you don't have something to kind of put you in check and see it a different way, I guess.
Right,
So.
right. And it's expectations, you know, you have to be willing to adjust your expectations. It's not always, I don't know. I guess it used to be one of those things where you have to win. No, the horse doesn't look at it like that. And so,
yeah. I think what we often see as defiance is really just misunderstanding on the horse's side. But if you've told yourself in your head it's defiance, it creates a very different path and conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, I was going to ask you about corner turners. I think we've covered quite a few corner turners in the horse department here. You have several. Are there any other impactful corner turners that you would like to mention today? And those would be people, horses, events that change our trajectory.
Yeah. The major corner turner for me, kind of it really in my life as far as horses, really was meeting Callie Thornburg and learning about Tevis. And that began a journey, a lifetime journey and a passion. And I just, endurance has opened a lot of doors, provided friendships, and it's just been an amazing journey. So I would say that was a corner turner for me. Had I not met her, I probably would have gone down I'm going to show in Western Pleasure. I'm not sure how long that would have lasted, but that was where I was headed at that point, because that's all I knew, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Actually, and I didn't
really
know it all that well, but...
When I think of you, I can't imagine what your life would look like without endurance. Like you endurance ladies are crazy. You are always out getting ready for a ride, trail riding, hauling here, hauling there. That definitely can't imagine what your life would look like, Lancette, if you weren't doing that. So,
well,
okay, so
kind of combined with, you know, passion for the outdoors, and it just all goes together. So it works. And it's one thing I should mention too is endurance is family friendly. You know, you can be old like me, or you can be 6 years old, and the whole family come and enjoy the sport, whether you're all riding, whether some folks are crewing. It's just like a big camping trip with your horses and your dogs. And who doesn't love that, right?
Yeah, and I need to get out to one. I need to get out to the White Mountain Tango, I think, because I have heard about your epic camps and potlucks and whatnot. So it definitely sounds like there is the endurance family, and it's strong.
Yes, yes. And you know, Tamara, I won't be able to ride the White Mountain Tango, but I do happen to have a horse that could go. You might need a rider.
You're right.
And you happen to know
I've
her.
heard this before. I've heard this before, and Lancette knows that every time I'm like, oh my God, it's how many hours, Lancette? You're crazy. But, you know, life is a little different now. I should think about it once again. I should.
Yes, you should. You're in the place for it. And I'll be up there probably by June something. So,
Okay.
you never know.
Don't be thinking about it. You never know.
Yeah.
Dolly says, as long as you're riding her horse, you just go for it.
Yeah. You definitely, I mean, it's like everything else. You want the horse to enjoy what they're doing as much as you enjoy it. And endurance isn't for every horse. But when you find the one who enjoys it, it's really fun.
Okay, well, Lancette, we're going to get to our most important question here. Okay?
I love this one.
If your fairy godmother granted you 3 horse-related wishes, what would they be?
So that was really, really fun to think about that question. Of course, I would love to have a ranch up in the White Mountains where I could just ride off my property with my horses. And I'd love to have a few more endurance horses to share with others who want to experience the sport. Honestly, we have 3 horses that are participating in 50-mile rides. My granddaughter, my husband, and my friend Ellen, we all ride. And so one person always has to sit out. But if I had, a few more endurance horses, I would love to share the sport with anybody else who was interested in learning about it. It's just been such an amazing, fun adventure for me that I'm always happy to share with others. And so that's 2 wishes, the barn and the horses. The other wish would be a baby clone of my Jantar. I would have loved to have had her as a baby and, experience that. So those were my wishes.
Love it. Okay. Well, Lancette, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for filling us in on all of the things and telling us about you and your sweet ponies. Where can people go to learn about endurance riding? And I'll say both in Arizona and just nationally. Where do they go to learn more and how do they get involved?
Okay. So the best way to get involved is to go to aserc.org. That's our Arizona club. And our national organization is aerc.org. At the aerc.org website, there is a lot of information. You will find the ride calendar, a lot of educational videos. You'll learn all about the sport, the rules. It's all there on the national organization's website.
Now, and I have not done a ride. We know Lancette has been trying to tell me to do a ride for quite some time now. I haven't done one, but I can say from personal experience that it is a very welcoming crew. If someone wants to get into it and they go looking for someone to kind of hold their hand and show them the way, it seems as though it's readily available, at least around here. I'm assuming it's probably like that everywhere. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. Our local club, we have events periodically. We call them learning events, and we cover different endurance related topics. We have rides where we will get together and have a endurance 101 and 201, and just always folks around who are willing to help in any way they can. It's a demanding sport. It's not easy, but it's worth the time and effort if that's something that folks are interested in doing. One good thing about horses,
and you know what?
So many things we can do with them.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, Lancette, you were the founder and president of the AZERC. We're not going to let that slide. Tell us when you founded that club.
So we organized the club in 2019.
Okay, so relatively new, I suppose.
Yeah.
Have you seen a lot of growth in Arizona since that time? Obviously, you were doing it for a little while before you started the club. Is it growing quite a bit?
So our club, we currently have about 100 members, and it's stayed about that number over the years. But endurance in general is declining. I don't know if it's just a sign of the economic times. People don't have the time or the disposable income to participate. But it is also kind of an extreme sport. So again, it isn't for everybody, I suppose. Our numbers, I believe at the end of last year, were nationally, our membership was under 4,000. So we are declining, but we're doing our best to try to, expose people to it. And part of the problem, I believe, too, is people just simply don't know about the sport.
Yeah, and I think, tell me what you think about this. I feel like the space and just doing certain outdoor sports in general, it'd be interesting to know what statistics look like on that. I would only guess that maybe they're all going down a little bit, which I think is a sad thing. I don't know. I've never thought to look that one up, but it's harder to get to open space in general. It's harder to get to horses. Do you feel like you just have to know where to go when it comes to knowing where to train and get ready and all that stuff?
No, I think there is something to be said for horse properties are disappearing. So it's a lot of work for a horse owner. Most of us have to trailer to the trail. And then once you get to the trail, they're often very crowded with ATVs and bikes. And so it is challenging. No doubt about that. And I do think that's part of the problem. Like you look at all of the growth of just our area here and in Mesa and out towards Apache Junction, and the land that used to be vacant is now housing developments. So it is definitely impacting it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of just in general the amount of people. It is true I used to go out and go to some of the places that I know you might ride around the river and things like that. It used to be not as crowded as it is now with, now you drive through there sometimes. If the weather is tolerable, I mean, good luck finding a parking spot anywhere.
Absolutely
so
true.
that's definitely, that's got to be a factor in that kind of thing. So yeah, very interesting. I wasn't even going to go here, but now we're here. I almost wrapped up, but I'm going to ask, and if you don't want to go there, that's fine. Do you think that the equine welfare conversation has much to do with that? I know in some sports, there's starting to be a lot of talk about the social license to operate and what are people saying about this sport, and are you feeling any of that conversation in the sport? Do you think that affects things?
I suppose for folks who are on the outside looking in and don't really know much about the sport, it possibly could impact their desire to get into it or not. There's probably a lot of things that misinformation, I would say, so I suppose maybe, but I haven't experienced that on a firsthand basis.
Okay. Well, we don't need to dive into that too far. I was just curious. It's one of those subjects that I have at times heard things about and just been like, whatever, not my problem. I don't care. I'm not worried about, not of course I'm worried about horses. We all know that.
Right.
I'm not really worried about competitions and this and that. But I do think that, for better or worse, I think the end of competitions would eventually mean the end of horses for a lot of people. I don't think, horses are going to disappear or be outlawed. I don't think that. But the more I have learned and the more I have zoomed out a little bit on it, whether someone wants to do a competition of some kind or not, I think just them being there, like if they get shut down, quote unquote, by some of these people who don't really know what they're looking at, outsiders looking in, like you mentioned, it just makes it that much harder to have access to barns and trails and all those things you were mentioning. I think we covered all the important stuff. So thank you so much, Lancette. This has been a good time, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, I will let you know when I'm headed your way.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit tamaraleebarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.